Major developments at this hour, everyone. Major arrests being made. The FBI has arrested whom they believe to be the head of MS-13, a very notorious gang. This is a very, very big deal. And you had Pam Bondi and Kash Patel all on the scene at these raids. We're just getting this news to us right now. Truly, truly unbelievable stuff, guys. Thank you for being here. So good to see so many familiar faces on such an important day. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get into it. I'm Trish Regan, by the way. Hello, this is the Trish Regan Show. Wow. Okay. Top MS-13 gang leader has been arrested. This came out moments ago, courtesy of one Kash Patel, who confirmed it via tweet saying, you know what, we got this guy. He was in Virginia. We had the help of Virginia law enforcement. It is always a good thing, right? Because not everybody's been so cooperative. Letitia James, I'm looking at you. Kathy Hochul, I'm looking at you. They're in New York. Check these guys out on the raid itself.
First reaction is all of our law enforcement officers are safe. That was the number one thing. They're safe. They executed a clean, safe operation, and the bad guys in custody. And thanks to the FBI, we got one of the worst of MS-13 off the streets this morning.
We were able to be out here in force to show the American people, to be here in person, that this means a lot to her and the mission. Safety is our primary concern of these communities, and we effectuated that today.
Amazing, right? Like, it can be done. They told us it couldn't. They told us you couldn't control the border unless you got more money. And somehow, border crossings have fallen 95% since Donald Trump came in. And now they told us, they couldn't fight this crime, not without more money. But what do you know? It's all going down. Let's go back to this raid.
What I want to do, I want to have other governors, other law enforcement officers come here to Virginia and see this amazing task force, Governor, that is led by our agencies and Governor Youngkin. And what's happening here in Virginia? Arrests have increased 468% from the same period last year. We didn't need new laws, as President Trump always said. We needed a new president. And we have great leadership standing behind him to fight to keep America safe and make America safe again. We will keep your community safe, and we will continue to do that.
You didn't need new laws. You just needed somebody who was willing to enforce them and to give ICE the power to do what ICE knows how to do. This is Tom Homan, our border chief, our border czar, saying, finally, you know what? ICE has been unleashed. And when ICE is unleashed, they can do their job and they can keep Americans safe. Listen to him here.
So the question a lot of people have is, how long has this person been in the country? And could the Biden administration have taken him down?
Of course they could have. I mean, the Biden administration, they tied ICE's hands. They didn't have our government approach, right? The FBI is doing doing things they shouldn't have done. But now they got Kash Patel there, you got Pam Bondi, great AG, who's making the FBI do what they're born to do, doing what they're supposed to do, chasing the bad guys, making this country safer. That's why this whole government approach makes so much sense. When we go on these operations, if we find an illegal alien with dope, DEA can prosecute him. We find him with a gun. ATF can prosecute him. FBI finds a domestic terrorism or terrorism investigation. They can prosecute him. So we can prosecute these people before we deport them. Look, it's a game changer. Under President Trump's leadership, we've arrested more criminal foreign fugitives in this country, more criminal illegal aliens in this country in 2 months than Joe Biden did in an entire year. So game on.
Game on. I mean, it's a big deal. It's amazing to me that you had such incompetence there for so long. But, times have changed. And as Donald Trump has said, he wouldn't want Pam Bondi after him.
And this is a beautiful, strong, wonderful woman, Attorney General Pam Bondi. But yesterday, she was talking about these guys that like burning down cars and plants and everything else. And I was watching her on television. She said, I'm going to get you. We're going to find you. And you're going to suffer. And I say, man, I don't want her after me. And, it's amazing. The attacks have gone down very, very precipitously. It's really, Pam is fantastic. Thank you very much, Pam. Really amazing.
So this is a big deal. Again, just to go through the headlines that are coming in, this is a 24-year-old whom federal authorities have now arrested. He was allegedly the leader of this MS gang there in Virginia. The Trump administration has said he's a Salvadoran national that was unlawfully, in other words, criminally present here in the United States and running this MS-13 and doing so in Virginia. Now that's important, right? Because Virginia was willing to play ball with the feds in this particular case. Virginia was like, we don't want these people here. I mean, amazingly, New York is like doing whatever they can to protect them. Letitia James has made that very clear over and over again, right? On Twitter, et cetera. Whereas Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, struck a very different tune and welcomed ICE in to be able to do its job. Which, by the way, constitutionally it can and should, because if there's one power that our federal government has, it's the ability to control the borders and to, by the way, deport and get rid of people that shouldn't be here. In this case, a severe, significant criminal that was leading the MS-13 gang in Virginia, according to federal authorities. Let's go to Glenn Youngkin for his response on all of this.
First and foremost, this task force was designed in the White House with this team around the table. What do we need to do in order to go after the gangs, the cartels, and, of course, the drugs in a community like Northern Virginia, like Fairfax County, that has seen county leadership not pursue the necessary steps in order to fight this crime? And this task force was architected in a very quick period of time and stood up immediately. And in fact, when Director Patel was confirmed, within a day, he authorized this facility and these capabilities. General Bondi immediately came to lead it, and we found ourselves with truly one-of-a-kind resources going to work. And I just want to emphasize the pace and the focus. And so, no, these were not lists that were available in the previous administration because they wouldn't do that. And the minute that we had partners that would do this with us, then lists of 500, 600, 700 targets could be put together in collaboration with state police and federal authorities and our Department of Corrections. Critically important, and I cannot emphasize enough the collaboration and support and leadership out of the new administration that is so different than what we saw in at least the previous 3 years of my administration. Finally, with regards to counties that are demonstrating resistance to cooperate with federal authorities and particularly with ICE.
He basically says, you guys are doing the wrong thing, right? If you are resisting cooperation with ICE, again, Letitia James, I'm looking at you. Kathy Hochul, I'm looking at you. Michelle Wu, there in Boston, I'm looking at you. All of these people, by the way, who are now frankly facing very difficult challenges themselves because Congress has referred them for prosecution to the DOJ. Remember the 4 mayors that got up there, and we heard from Chicago and we heard from Boston about all the money that they're spending on illegal migrants, but yet they're not working with ICE. They're not working with federal authorities to actually do these arrests. I mean, they got trouble coming. Really and truly. I don't think this is a good look. I'm just saying, like, if you're going to be the governor that's out there saying, I want MS-13 to stay here in my country, I don't think that's really going to work for you. I think you want to be on the side of law and order in this particular case. I think most Americans are on the side of law and order, and that's why you're seeing with the recent Marist poll, overwhelmingly, Americans feel like America is on the right track. 63% of Americans right now support deportations of criminals. It doesn't seem like it should be that crazy, or that you're out on a limb saying, yeah, I want the MS-13 gang deported. And yet, you know, with these guys, hey, anything's up, right? It's truly sort of amazing how they're willing to defend this. I want to get into what Marco Rubio is doing, because he's saying, no way. You know what? I got power. I don't have to go to the 1798 Aliens Act. I can actually use something from 1952, which enables me to get rid of people with political biases that are not in sync with our country. I can just revoke all their visas. These are the student visas we're talking about. But these are just actual criminals, right? Well, why do you want the criminals? Seriously, guys, why do you want the criminals in the country? So the Trump team is now just basically really and truly telling the judicial system to pound sand on this one. You guys want all this information on the deportations and this, that, and the other? They're like, basically like F off, right? Like, we're not doing this because this is actually now a matter of state secrets. And that is the justification that you're hearing right now from the likes of Pam Bondi and others. Donald Trump, of course, making it clear that he's got that 1798 Enemy Aliens Act that we can rely on because this is effectively a time of war. You've got Venezuelans coming in, or perhaps these MS-13 members who are, this is, I don't know how you want to slice it any other way. I mean, it's a kind of war on American society. And this is what he said most recently while traveling on Air Force One.
Criticism that the Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 other times. They were all during times of war. Do you feel that you're using it appropriately right now?
Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals, murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
Yeah. Okay? In that sense, it is. I mean, if you're living in a community and you're struggling with MS-13, you don't think that's a kind of war? So again, I'm sort of troubled. Like, how do you come out on the side of the criminals on this one? And by the way, if you're here as a student and you're an agitator, there's a 1952 law that enables the State Department to deport you. Why can't we deport somebody who's here illegally straight back to El Salvador? And by the way, that's where they're going on this, because this gang, as you may or may not know, originates out of El Salvador. It's one of the reasons why Bukele's crackdown has been so significant in El Salvador, because he wanted to clean up this gang. So many members of this gang have now come to the United States, and so the administration is tasked with trying to clean up the streets and get rid of the violence that is being perpetuated from these MS-13 members. So this guy in particular, the 24-year-old they believe that was a ringleader in Virginia, he's from El Salvador. So I don't even, you're here. We believe that you're the ringleader of this gang. We're going to send you back to El Salvador. I really don't understand what the big deal is there. You're going to go back to the country that you came from. End of story. You are here illegally. We believe you to be this, etc. So as you well know, the judge in this deportations case, he'd been asking all these questions, and we heard last week from Pam Bondi on Thursday, after the deadline had been extended, that she wasn't going to turn it over. She's like, listen, he has no authority to be asking these things. And when she eventually answered some of his questions, it was very thinly done. In other words, this administration has a message. And that message is, don't get in the way of national security. You're a district judge. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about. Here's Pam effectively saying that last Thursday on Fox News.
Let's start, if we might, from the decision by Judge Boasberg. Tomorrow is your deadline to answer questions. Those questions include the following: what time did the plane take off from U.S. soil? Where did it leave from? What time did it leave U.S. airspace? And what time did it land in a foreign country? You have, 4, 5, 6 questions the judge wants answers to regarding the details of those flights over the weekend. How will you respond at the Department of Justice?
Well, Will, our lawyers are working on this. We will answer appropriately, but what I will tell you is this judge has no right to ask those questions. You have one unelected federal judge trying to control foreign policies, trying to control the Alien Enemies Act, which they have no business presiding over. And there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer now. That's because those people are out of this country. The judge had no business, no power to do what he did. And Will, he came in on an emergency basis on a Saturday with very, very short notice, if any, to our attorney to run in the courtroom. And this has been a pattern with these liberal judges. You just spoke about that. It's been a pattern with what they've been doing. This judge had no right to do that. They're meddling in foreign affairs. They're meddling in our government. And the question should be, why is a judge trying to protect terrorists who have invaded our country over American citizens? You know, TDA is a terrorist organization. They are organized, they have a government structure within them. They are sending money not only throughout this country to each other, but back to Venezuela. They are a terrorist organization, and we are not going to have that in our country. We are going to deport them.
We're going to deport them, right? That's her message. We're going to keep on deporting them. TDA is the Venezuelan gang. MS-13 is the El Salvadoran gang, and it originated, as I said, in El Salvador. It's just been a disaster there, but the new president has come in and he's like, you know what, I'm not taking it. I'm not dealing with it. We're going to be really strict on this. I got a war on gangs. And what have they done? They have dramatically cut the homicide rate there to the lowest in Latin America. I mean, that's amazing, right? That is an enormous success story. So Trump's like, I don't want these people here. Send them back. Let Bukele deal with them, right? He can deal with them because they got quite a way of dealing with them, shall we say, there in their El Salvadorian prison system. Tom Homan saying, you know what, I don't care two bits about any of these judges. We are here to do what we are here to do. And now the DOJ backing them up and saying, yeah, we got national security concerns here at risk. We don't have to provide all this information or all these excuses to these judges. Listen to Tom. I've played this, but I want to play it again because he's saying there's no way in HELL we're stopping. No way, Jose. How do you like that?
Another flight every day. Teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
And by the way, I should point out that they've continued doing what they're doing because there was another flight that took off after the one that went to El Salvador that went back to Venezuela with a bunch of Venezuelan alleged criminals. And then you have them saying, you know, no, we're not going to do this because we have state secrets on our side. This is a matter of national security, and we're not going to be stopped by these crazy judges that have all kinds of, well, personal vendettas. I mean, that's what they're saying. Tremendous bias. We're going to get into those biases. First, just to shout out, if you're not on 76 Research, guys, you got to do this. I created it for you. It only costs $1, right? Those are our top 3 portfolios. Look at those holdings, up 72%, 75%, 72% for some of the top. These are the top 5 in each of the portfolios. All of the portfolios are beating the S&P, which is not an easy thing to do, but you better believe we're doing it. I got a really good partner at 76 Research, my very dear friend, Rob Horton, who's brilliant, smart, and by the way, he's got so much between the two of us that we're generating. You really just ought to sign up. If nothing else, use my code $, sign up for the newsletter. But the real value, I'm just going to say, like I just have to say because I'm looking out for you, is in the portfolios. That's where you want to be. We tell you our top 10 to 15 stocks in each of these things. There's a growth portfolio, an inflation protection portfolio, an income builder portfolio. So hopefully you can retire one day. Go check those out. 76portfolios.com. Remember that, 76portfolios.com, or go to 76research.com. Get those portfolios, guys. I want to see you succeed, and I actually really believe in the economic policies that are being put forward. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for the U.S. economy right now. Meanwhile, Marco Rubio, he's like, I'm not taking it. I got these crazy students that are trying to be massive agitators all around the country. Well, guess what? I got the law on my side thanks to a 1952 piece of legislation. He has actually already revoked 300 visas. And he said there's more coming. I want you to listen to him himself. He's talking about one woman that he took her visa from, and they're deporting her out of the country. And he's like, yeah, we get around 300. Because there's no reason we should have people who are agitators who want to do harm to America here in this country. Like, it's a privilege, thank you very much, to be able to study here in the U.S. A privilege. Remember that. Here's Marco.
We revoked her visa. It's an F1 visa, I believe. We revoked it, and here's why. And I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost your visa, you're no longer legally in the United States, and we have a right, like every country in the world has a right, to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple. I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid for any country in the world to welcome people into their country that are going to go to your universities as visitors. They're visitors. And say, I'm going to your universities to start a riot. I'm going to your universities to take over a library and harass people. I don't care what movement you're involved in. Why would any country in the world allow people to come and disrupt? Now, we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses. And if we've given you a visa and then you decide to do that, we're going to take it away. I encourage every country to do that, by the way, because I think it's crazy to invite students into your country that are coming onto your campus and destabilizing it. We're just not going to have it. So we'll revoke your visa, and once your visa is revoked, you're illegally in the country and you have to leave. Every country in the world has a right to decide who comes in as a visitor and who doesn't. If you invite me into your home because you say, I want to come to your house for dinner, and I go to your house and I start putting mud on your couch and spray painting your kitchen, I bet you're going to kick me out. Well, we're going to do the same thing if you come into the United States as a visitor and create a ruckus for us. We don't want it. We don't want it in our country. Go back and do it in your country. But you're not going to do it in our country.
Thank you. Like, finally, some sanity in the world. Things have gotten crazy. Oh, Mountain Goddess, thank you so much. She says, Trish for POTUS 2028. I'll tell you, I admire everybody that's getting into the political arena right now and doing the right thing. I want to welcome 2 new team members here. We have Ricky. Thank you for being here. It's great to have you on the team. And I think we have one more member as well. Let me go over and just welcome Wesley Holloway. Thank you for being here as well. Great to have you here on the team. You know what? We exchange ideas here. If you got ideas, send them my way. I actually read all the comments. Believe it or not, I do. So make a comment. Anytime you see a video, do that. Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, is saying, listen, he has all the authority in the world to deport whoever he wants to deport if they are agitating in America. So you got these students, or anybody, frankly, who comes here, and if suddenly they turn into a rebel that wants to take down the country in some way, shape, or form, however that may be, whether it be protests, whether it be agitation on college campus, whether it be these, op-eds. I mean, they just don't have, let's be honest, they just don't have exactly the same set of rights as an American citizen. You're here as a guest. It is a privilege to be here. And so he says, and he has, initiate deportation proceedings against any non-citizen whose presence in the United States he can reasonably deem a threat to the country's foreign policy aims. And so that gets back to, the guy at Columbia, the 30-year-old with the pregnant wife, 8 months pregnant, who's been leading, he's from Palestine, he's been leading all these protests against Israel, making Israeli kids and Jewish American kids feel extraordinarily unsafe, to the point where they actually had to cancel classes at Columbia. Think about that. They're canceling classes. They're canceling graduation because of this guy who is here on a student visa because he's a guest in our country. He gets to call the shots and shut down an entire university. You think that's fair? I don't. And you know what? Here's the law. It was introduced in 1952. It was, of course, during the Cold War era, and it allowed for the U.S. to bar or deport immigrants suspected of communist affiliations, and it gave the government broad authority to exclude or remove people for their political beliefs. Now, let me be very clear. McCarthyism was awful, right? I mean, we all know that. And it was sort of like we lived for the last 4 years during Biden in a reverse kind of McCarthyism, because if you were a conservative, you were like persona non grata, and they wanted to shut you down and make it so you couldn't make any money, and just everything bad that you could possibly associate with McCarthyism back in the days in the 50s basically was then transferred over, and it was wrong and it shouldn't happen. But let me just say this. what he was onto was not wrong, that there are people out there that hate the United States of America. There are people out there that want to do the United States of America harm. And there are people that will take advantage of our generosity and come here and try and stir things up in a way that's extraordinarily negative for the country. So I give Markle all the credit in the world for going back into the law books and finding the 1952 Immigration Act, which gives the State Department and the government overall this broad authority to exclude or remove people for their political beliefs. So that's a big deal. If you're a threat to the country in some way, shape, or form, if you're a threat to our foreign policy, then you're out. And there's going to be a lot more coming. I mean, 300 already with more on the way. He has signaled exactly what's going on. You know, you think about how our academic system has just been manipulated and corrupted. It's awful, right? I mean, you can't even say Columbus Day anymore. It's National People's Day or whatever. You know, I'm trying to forget all that, right? Like, let it be a thing of the past. I mean, Thanksgiving is taught as a whole different thing now in school today than it was. Oh, I just found this one out. Let me make sure I get it right. Because you can't use before Christ, like, you know, BC anymore. It's actually BCC. I was a history major. At Columbia, incidentally, but I guess I'm that old that they weren't doing this at that time. So I had no idea what it was. I called my mom one day. She was a history major as well, specialized actually in Chinese and Russian history because, you know, she was during that Cold War thing. And I'm like, have you ever heard of this? Do you know what BCC is? And that is the new term that the kids are using because you're no longer allowed to say before Christ because somehow that makes Christ the center of the universe, and we can't be so, you know, it's not politically correct to say this. I'm like, are you kidding me? But this is where school is nowadays, which is why I am proud of my affiliation. Let me just tell you, this is a wonderful organization. Herzog Foundation and I have partnered up because they have a whole program for Christian education here in the country, K through 12. And you know, if you have a child, if you have a grandchild, if you have a niece or nephew, this is something to look at. They're a wonderful foundation. They've got all the resources to help guide you in your local community to figure out what the alternatives are to the public school system. Now, Trump's doing a lot to try and change it, and getting rid of the Department of Education for starters, but there's a lot more that can be done. And in the interim, right, what do you do with your kid? You might want to look at a Christian education, and Herzog can help you do that. So go to Herzog Foundation and sign up. It's all free. You know, you get all this information. It's well worth it. They have a podcast. They have a publication they put out daily, The Lion. I just highly, highly recommend it. I'm proud of this affiliation. It's one of the greatest things I signed up, in my estimation, to do this year. So check them out when you can. Did you see this one? So I'm just like looking at this whole thing with this Judge Boasberg. You know Judge Boasberg. He's the one that wanted to stop all the deportations mid-flight, which didn't happen. And now it's this go-around. Well, you know, they must not have a lot of judges because somehow this is the exact same judge that's going to actually deal with this Signal text case. You know, that's all been discovered. By the way, there's another wrinkle that we've just learned in this. The woman who is chairman of the board for Signal, that would be one Catherine Moore, who was quizzed brilliantly so by one Brandon Gill, the junior congressman out of Texas. I'm going to get to that in a moment. She did a horrible job, and he was tremendous. But it turns out this NPR lady who used to run Wikipedia is actually the head of Signal as well. So 6 degrees of separation, getting just a little bit weird, don't you think? Hey, Grey Ghost, thank you so much. I love that. I so appreciate your generosity and your compliment. Thank you very, very much. So this is Judge Boasberg. And he's now been handled the Signal case because, of course, you know, somebody's suing because they think it's preventing the unlawful destruction of federal records and to compel defendants to fulfill their legal obligations to preserve and record federal records that were all created on Signal. And the judge overseeing that, it's Judge Boasberg, who's the same one who wanted to stop the deportations. He also, interestingly enough, is the same exact judge who refused to allow Hillary Clinton's nearly 15,000 emails to come out until after Election Day. He specifically wanted, back in 2016, those emails. He created a whole new timetable so as perhaps to help her. he wanted to prevent any kind of election interference. I mean, if you ask me, that is a kind of election interference of sorts. I mean, shouldn't the public have known? But he hid those for obvious reasons, I guess. I mean, I don't know what his political affiliation is per se, but I can tell you this. His daughter works for an NGO that's out there defending the MS-13 criminal members. Wow. I mean, you can't make it up. And then you think about this one, little Chucky boy saying that he's so proud. This one over the weekend, of the 235 liberal lefty judges that they put in place so as to combat Donald Trump, making me think, what is this? They're like stacking the courts. This is good old Venezuela style, by the way. They stack the courts so as to just create all these obstacles for Donald Trump, who, by the way, is not having it. He's doing what he's doing anyway, citing 1952 legislation, citing 1798 legislation, and citing, well, just the reality that there's a security violation if the judge is brought into it. Here's Chuck Schumer bragging about the 235 judges they put in.
There are those who believe that we are in real time living through an assault on the constitutional order. Do you believe that we are in a constitutional crisis right now?
Yes, our democracy is at risk because Donald Trump shows that he wishes to violate the laws in many, many different ways. The good news here is we did put 235 judges, progressive judges, judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time. And we hope that the appellate courts, when it gets up there, and the Supreme Court will uphold those rulings. They restored the money to NIH. They required that 8,000 federal employees have to come back. We're in over 100 lawsuits against them, and we are having a good deal of success. It's only at the lower court level right now.
Oh, my gosh. So what are they really trying to do? Andrew Fay, thank you for your generosity, making the point that back during the Cold War, fancy Ivy League schools were teaching Marxism so that you could actually try and get inside the heads of the Soviets. And when that dried up, those jobless professors kept it alive to stay relevant. I would say, you know what? It's even more than that. There's actually a belief out there. They love communism and Marxism. I mean, that's what Bernie Sanders is all about, AOC too, right? I mean, somehow Bernie Sanders still has millions of dollars and a couple of houses. All those books, apparently, he's not so Marxist when it comes to the books. It always ends up this way, by the way. Every single communist society, you look at what happens. Oh, you get a few little people on the top that are controlling the government, and then the masses of people all stuck, barely getting by, hoping for their next loaf of bread. That's what happens in a communist society. It does not end well. We've tried it all over the world. Why on earth they want to try it here? I don't know, except that they want power. These people are so hungry for power. And look at what they did, and look at what they've done, and look at the academic institutions that are breeding grounds for this nonsense. And then you got 235 judges that they put in that are going to continue this breeding ground for such nonsense. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're the judge that's getting in the way of turning away criminals, we got people who are here illegally that are known to be MS-13 gang members, and you don't want to send them back to El Salvador? I don't know how you justify that position. I really don't. I think that you do have the law on your side in that particular case. 1, they were here illegally. 2, they're doing the country harm. 3, they're criminals. Boom. Get them out. Here's Patricia Millett, however. She's taken the appellate course on the deportations from Boasberg, and she's clearly got an agenda. This thing is going to have to go all the way to the Supreme Court. I don't know how it's going to shake out, in part because he sent them back to El Salvador instead of Guantanamo, and they've been convicted of all these crimes. I would just say they're here illegally. Can you not at least send them home to their own home country? Oh, not according to Patricia. Listen to her.
Am I wrong about anything I just said, factually?
Your Honor, I think it's incorrect that they couldn't have gone into court as the 5 individual plaintiffs.
No, but the point here was that there were plane loads of people. I mean, it's a class action. There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here, where the proclamation required the promulgation of regulations, and they had hearing boards before people were removed. And yet here there's nothing in there about hearing boards, there's no regulations, and nothing was adopted by the agency officials that were administering this. People weren't given notice, they weren't told where they were going, and they were given Those people on those planes on that Saturday had no opportunity to file habeas or any type of action to challenge the removal under the AEA. And like you've agreed that 2 of those airplanes, people were removed under the AEA. What's factually wrong about what I said?
Well, Your Honor, we certainly dispute the Nazi analogy, but more importantly, the fact is that individual plaintiffs were able to file habeas in time in order to secure relief.
Wait,
and
what individual plaintiffs were?
The 5 individual plaintiffs that
That's not my question. My question
Yeah, okay. She doesn't like hearing that. So he's saying they were actually able to file. And yet we kind of dispute the Nazi comparison. Why do they always go back to that, right? Why? I mean, unbelievable. I'm just saying, like, there's some suspicion here that they have stacked the courts. I mean, look at Letitia James, right? In New York, her entire reason for being is to take on Trump and fight Trump. And maybe she thinks that's going to land her the presidency of the United States. Here's where it gets really ugly for these folks. These are criminals. We need them out of the country. We want good people in the country, not bad people in the country. If you are a criminal or gang member and trying to do United States citizens harm, or if you're here on a student visa and you're trying to organize protests so as to shut down a campus, I don't think it's that hard. That's what you call common sense. And for some reason, they don't have any of that in these academic institutions, in these liberal government deep state institutions. And so how do you curb it? Well, Mike Lee has an idea. This is a senator from Utah. He was on my former colleague Laura Ingram's show last night, and he came up with an interesting idea. And by the way, this has been talked about by other folks. Justice Kagan, I believe, who's not exactly on the right, has brought this up before, because you can't have these just wild cards of district judges getting in the way of everything so that everything has to go up to the Supreme Court. Listen to Mike Lee about how we need some legislation to protect against rogue judges.
That it takes to go through a normal process.
Yeah, it basically nullifies the will of the people and the president's authority. Joining me now, Utah Senator Mike Lee, also former Supreme Court clerk of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Elena Kagan, she's a principled liberal. She's obviously right. This is a disaster.
Absolutely right. She's the one who said we're all textualists now. She's a textualist, and she was right when she said that.
So what do we do now in the Senate? There are a couple of different ideas. Explain them clearly to the people watching tonight, because they think, well, you can't stop a court. A court wants to rule. Why isn't that okay?
One of the best things we could do is pass legislation that I introduced day before yesterday that would limit the jurisdiction of the courts, making it so that a single district judge can't issue an injunction against the U.S. government with nationwide applicability on a major matter of presidential policy. It needs to be going through a 3-judge district court with an automatic direct appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. It would make it very difficult to judge shop, and it would make it so we get a final resolution from the Supreme Court.
Would this be a rotating panel
Yes.
of district court judges?
I love it, right? Because the judge shopping is a problem. These rogue judges are a problem. We got to actually reform this system. And Kagan has talked about it before. So let's come up with some solutions here. I got to get to this unbelievable story. I cannot believe this about this woman from NPR. But first, a shout out for my friends at Balance of Nature. You know, I take this stuff every day. My fruits and veggies. I almost said fruits and gummies. They taste good. Don't take too many. You know, vitamin D levels can actually get too high. I had a situation with that once. One of my kids, she's got such a sweet tooth, and she found the gummies, and she was trying to take a few too many. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, vitamin C you can flush out, but vitamin D, that will actually build up. I need all the vitamin D however I can get. Like, I should just be like eating bottles of this stuff, but I do take it every day. So fruits and veggies from Balance of Nature, I encourage you to take a look at them. They've got a great product. They've been around for a lot of years, and there's thousands of testimonials, not just mine, but they really do a lot to just boost your system. Listen, you got to get all of the nutrients you can get, and I try and get them specifically from food, but I'll be honest, I don't eat my broccoli every night the way I should. My Brussels sprouts, one of my girls put maple syrup, the one with the sweet tooth, in the Brussels sprouts last night. And I was like, I can't eat these. I just can't. You know, I need my Brussels sprouts to taste like Brussels sprouts. So good thing I had my fruits and veggies. Go check them out at Balance of Nature. You can get 35% off with my discount code. Use the discount code Trish. You get free shipping, money back guarantee, all of that good stuff. I'm leaving everything in the show notes so you can see it there. I got to say, you know, there's all these there's all these things happening, job cuts that I want to get to momentarily, that I think have everybody in Washington, D.C. totally freaked out, like flipping out, to the point where when I look at what went down with Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz and John Radcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not so sure it wasn't a total setup. And I say this just because it's a little random to add somebody onto your Signal chat. I'm also going to point out that the Signal chat was considered secure in something that Biden's CIA encouraged them to use. We can talk some more about it, but what I want to get to first is this bizarre little number. Catherine Marr, former head of Wikipedia, now head of NPR. She happens to be the head of the board for the Signal app where all this went down. Oh, Jay Sullivan's on there too. Interesting, don't you think? I mean, in the 6 degrees of separation spirit, I mean, why was Catherine Marr the head of this thing? And does it point to an inside job? I think it was. Listen, I don't know anything. These are just my instincts and my intuition, which tends to be right and has been right over and over and over again. I don't think that this was just by chance. How is it that Jeffrey Goldberg, of all people, would be put on this? An Atlantic reporter? He was put on there because they knew he would sing their song and dance their dance. He was put on there because they knew he would come straight to the Democrats. He wouldn't go to the White House. He would also look at it very seriously. And again, I'm just saying, I don't know. Could it have been the Biden administration doing something? Could it have been somebody else, just wanting to keep tabs on these folks, right? Because the deep state wants to make sure they're not doing anything totally crazy. They want to keep an eye on Pete Hegseth and company. I'm not sure, but I do think it's peculiar that Catherine Marr is the head of the board. And let me just be really clear. NPR is not a fair organization in any way, shape, or form, as Brandon Gill so articulately put forward in yesterday's hearings with her. She was a train wreck. I believe Jesse Waters referred to her as trying to play the dumb blonde. Oh, I don't remember this, that, or the other. She's not as dumb as she looks. This woman, in my estimation, is a total liar. I suspect she's quite dangerous. I think it's weird that she's head of the Signal board and that all of this was found out on Signal. Let's watch Brandon with her. He takes her down.
Marr, I want to start with you. Just generally, would you say you generally agree or disagree with the following statement? The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles?
I would not say I agree with that, sir.
You're not. That's good to hear. It's interesting because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism. Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
I apologize, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I have never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, Yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt. Yes, reparations. Yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir, I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone
Seems
to pay
to be what you're
reparations, sir.
suggesting. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being illegal.
You tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time at NPR.
You tweeted that you read that book, but...
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
Do you...
Oh my gosh! I mean, and it went on and on and on and on. I'm blown away. I'm sorry, I'm laughing so hard and I'm still getting over a cold, so like it trips me up. But he's like, and Brent is great, by the way, and he actually is the son-in-law of my dear friend Dinesh D'Souza, and I love Dinesh's daughter Danielle. They're just a wonderful family. But he's really smart, and he's very fastidious about his stuff. So I'm sure he had all his research, and he looked at all these tweets, and he's like, yeah, you tweeted it. Like, what's going on, lady? What is going on? Who is she, really? I mean, she's a Middle Eastern scholar, a student from NYU that then went to Cairo University and grew up in Tony Fairfield County, Connecticut. Doesn't really believe the truth matters at all. I showed you that clip in one of her TED Talks. I mean, the head of NPR talking about how like truth is just, it's not really that important. Why? Because it's her truth. What she believes should be true is what she's trying to promote. So just keep this in mind, you guys, because she is the woman who is chair of the board of Signal. Signal is the app that these guys got caught talking on by a totally liberal reporter who's probably part of her cabal, shall we say. And it's strange. Like, it's really strange. I'm going to go back to Laura. I love Laura. And Laura had Mike Waltz on. Mike Waltz is trying to explain this. He's like, I'm responsible. But she's asking the same questions I'm asking and you're asking because this doesn't make any sense.
But I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't know what staffer is responsible for this right now?
Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible, and look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number? Have you
ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like someone else. Now whether he did it deliberately or it happened in some other technical mean is something we're trying to figure out.
So your staffer did not put his contact information.
No,
but how did it end up in your phone?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, but that's a pretty big problem.
That's what we've got the best technical minds, right?
That's disturbing.
And that's where, I mean, I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets
someone
sucked
sent
in,
you that
it gets
contact.
sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was?
So
on
the person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this
Who
guy.
was that person?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
Okay.
So the upshot is somehow Jeffrey Goldberg gets put on. I'm telling you, I think somebody put him on. I don't actually think that Mike screwed up. I don't think any of that happened. By the way, nothing was like extraordinary that got put there. They're trying to say, this is like big deal plans. Can I just also say, like, that actually went well. Unlike Afghanistan, that op actually went very well. Mountain Goddess coming back and joining us again here. Thank you again for your generosity. So appreciated. We're independent here, so we love that. Have you ever read the book Color, Communism, and Common Sense by Manning Johnson? No, but I will actually. Look, this whole sort of movement towards Marxism and CRT, etc. It's all like grounded in this lofty intellectual thinking that came out of academia and a lot of law schools actually, and really has just is perverted, frankly, in its own way and in its thinking. And if you ask me, is fundamentally racist itself, because it's assuming that someone can't be whatever they want to be because of the color of their skin. And that's just bogus. That's not what this country is. That's why people come here to this country, thank you very much, because we're not that kind of place. And we got plenty of successful groups here in the United States of America. Vivek Ramaswamy will tell you that, and so will the Vice President of the United States' wife, Usha, who's going up to Greenland, by the way. But look, this is the Atlantic thing. The Trump administration accidentally texted me. I don't think this was an accident. I think that somebody wanted to keep tabs on them and then thought this would be fun, and this could be like the new takedown, just like we had Russia, which was a complete joke. Thank you. President Trump is declassifying all documents associated with that because Obama's team was spying on several GOP campaigns, not one, at least two. We had George Papadopoulos, who was the victim of this stuff with 3 different honeypot schemes. I know, George. He's now married to a very beautiful wife. But anyway, George went through a lot. And they kept targeting him on Ben Carson's campaign and then on Trump's campaign. And I'm just telling you guys, like, there's something up. They did something. These things can happen. Like, hacks can happen. And you can say, well, maybe they shouldn't have been on Signal to begin with, whatever. They should have been using something else. I'll just say that I think it was deliberate. The choice of Jeffrey Goldberg tells me a lot. And now you got people asking crazy questions like this. Was it Pete's fault? Was he drinking? They're going back to that. Let me just tell you, the CIA chief, John Radcliffe, boom, he answered this thing exactly how it deserved to be answered. Kudos to him. Watch.
To your knowledge, do you know whether Pete Hegseth had been drinking before he leaked classified information?
I don't have any knowledge of Secretary Hegseth's personal habits.
Director Radcliffe, same question. Yes or no?
No, I'm going to answer that. I think that's an offensive line of questioning. The answer is no. I find it interesting that you want to... I'm going to answer. You asked me a question. You want an answer?
No, listen.
You don't want to focus on the good work that the CIA is doing, that the intelligence community...
Director, I reclaim my time. Director, I reclaim my time. Here, I have huge respect for the CIA, huge respect for our men and women in uniform. But this was a question that's on the top of minds of every American, right? He stood in front of a podium in Europe holding a drink. So, of course, we want to know if his performance is compromised. If people were asking if the General Austin was compromised because of a heart issue,
was his performance compromised because of a successful
I yield
strike?
Back. Mr. I bring my
you want to know? You want to talk about
I
accepting
reclaim my
responsibility?
time.
Do you think you should
reclaim my
accept
time,
responsibility
Chairman.
for a successful
Let me ask
strike to make Americans safer?
I
You want to
reclaim my
focus
time.
on.
He wants to reclaim his time because he realizes it was a stupid question that was completely irrelevant. And here, I will say this. It was a successful attack. And this seems kind of innocuous. Like, I mean, honestly, right? If Signal can be hacked, I suspect it can be hacked by us. It can probably be hacked by one Catherine Marr and her little cronies that run the board, including our former head of the NSC, one Jay Sullivan. Interesting crowd. All right, so I think we know where this came from. I mean, John Radcliffe saying as well, like, how the CIA set it up for him, the Biden CIA.
So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
So I'm just going to go back to this. So these are the texts, right? And Pete Hegseth responded after Jeffrey Goldberg published these and basically said, you don't know what you're talking about because these are not exactly war plans. Again, it was a successful mission, so that's the good news. It's suspicious that it didn't actually get into more dangerous hands per se. It seems to me like it was an inside job. And I see some of you guys are asking, well, what about the staffer that put the phone contact in? Is it the staffer's fault? I think that's too obvious. Way too obvious. I think that they had some other way of getting into his phone and perhaps relabeling someone in there. Nelson Reyes, thank you. Again, you guys are so generous, and I appreciate your commentary both on my style. Thank you for the compliment about my no-nonsense style and content that your 5-year-old daughter can overhear in the background and wouldn't be upset about. That actually means a lot. You know, I have 3 kids, so they often watch my YouTube channel and they watch the show. So like I say, we got to keep it clean. We got to keep it clean as much as we can. I appreciate your generosity. Thank you. But this is the thing, okay? So it was a successful mission. And Pete points out, like, you guys just don't know what you're talking about. Let me get this straight, he writes. The Atlantic released the so-called war plans, and those plans include no names, no targets, no locations, no units, no routes, no sources, no methods, and no classified information. So those must be some really bad war plans. The only thing proven here is that Jeff Goldberg has never seen a war plan or an attack plan in his life, not even close. You know, they're trying to derail everything. This is what they do, and it's wrong, but I think it's par for the course. These people cannot accept that the world is changing because we Americans are demanding it. You know, I've got contacts in deep state and CIA and this and that and the other, and what I've always been told is, well, we can kind of arrange things, right, on the margin because they controlled the flow of information. All the propaganda that will get pushed out overseas. It's harder now. That's why you have millions of dollars going to the likes of Reuters from the State Department to help with social media stuff. All right, that's what that USAID has become, right? They're trying to push out their messages, and that's the name of the game. The problem is they've turned it on us, as we've talked about. Thanks to Obama and the Smith-Mundt Act and its modernization in 2013, which enabled all that USAID money to then be used to fight for and on behalf of democracy right here back at home. So it's all coming out, and they're terrified of it. They're absolutely terrified, and that's why they're resisting so much. That they don't want the truth, because the truth actually implicates them. Quick reminder, I think I told you about this yesterday, guys. I've got a big event coming up, the Freedom Fighters event with JCN. This is Job Creators Network. I'm really excited about it. I'm going down to Savannah, Georgia, which is beautiful, May 1st. I think it'll be great weather. May 1st and 2nd. I'd love for you to attend if you can attend. It's the annual Freedom Fighters Summit. We're going to have a lot of people that you may recognize there. I keep laughing because they gave me a script to read for this ad. I never read the scripts, but you know, I try to stick to the bullet points. And it says we're going to be discussing pressing issues facing our nation with conservative luminaries leading America's political revolution with media stars like Trish Regan. And then a whole bunch of other people. Bill Bennett will be there. My friend Mike Gallagher is also over at Salem. Sarah Carter, who's a wonderful investigative reporter. We have Kellyanne Conway, who's going to be there. My dear friend Steve Moore and Grover Norquist, who I love, you know, because I hate taxes too. Governors Youngkin. Oh, that's great. We really got to talk to Youngkin because he's been all over this with ICE, right? Governor Kemp, along with members of the president's cabinet, members of Congress. It is going to be phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Here's the thing, there's only 150 tickets. So if you want to go, I encourage you to go. Use this code word Salem because you'll get the second ticket. If you want to take your spouse or a friend, you'll get the second ticket at 50% off. So buy one, get the second one, 50% off, 150 that are available that I can allocate out to you you guys with Salem as the code word. So JCN2025summit.com, JCN2025summit.com. I will put that in the show notes for you because you may want to do that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really looking forward to it and looking forward to some good weather. Hopefully it's good weather. I'll tell you, you never know. You know, these networks, I mean, first of all, the establishment media, right? They're freaking out. They got so much to lose here. And it's not just the media, it's not just rather the institutions, I should say, it's the media itself in more ways than one. I mean, I actually think that there's going to be a network fire sale coming pretty darn soon. What do you think all the network changes are about? You know, with every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Jane, Jill, and Susan swapping out on the anchor chairs. It's because the money is going away. I mean, they're not going to have whatever they may have been getting from USAID. I don't know. They're not going to have that. And then they're not going to have possibly Big Pharma. That's the word on the street right now, that networks are preparing for a fire sale because they are about to lose the Big Pharma money that is so critically important to them because RFK Jr. has said so much. New York Times had a recent article on this saying the pharmaceutical industry is on track to spend over $5 billion on national television advertisements this year, according to iSpot, which tracks this stuff. And the most aggressive campaigns are for newer medications that haven't gone through that haven't gone generic, right? But compete in a crowded field of similar drugs. And so they're trying to reach patients with common conditions like arthritis and diabetes. And research has found that the majority of top advertised drugs offer little to no medical benefit compared to existing treatments. And many cost tens of thousands a year. And somehow they want you to take it, so this is why they put this out there on the airwaves. And the networks are like happy to oblige because this is the major revenue source. Advertisements for the makers of prescription and over-the-counter drugs, according to iSpot TV, they account for half of all ad spending. Half of all ad spending. That's massive. So if you don't have Big Pharma, bye, ABC News, CBS News, ABC News, it's game over. Like these guys are going away for good. Oh, we're going to get to this story because RFK is all in the news today. But first, let me show you here. RFK Jr. is actually speaking about why he actually thinks we need to get rid of Big Pharma ads. Let's take a listen.
This network president told me that if one of his talk shows allowed me on the air that he would fire the host. This person is a friend of mine. And I would have to fire the host because this is where our advertisers are. And if he lost an advertiser, it's a major catastrophe for the network. The press has effectively been neutralized. All you have to do is sit down and watch the 6 o'clock news on TV and see how many of those stories are bracketed by pharmaceutical ads. I was told by a network executive that during non-election years, during some months during non-election years, up to 70% of his news division revenues are coming from pharma.
Wow. So if they lose Big Pharma, they've lost their businesses. I mean, especially on those big 3 networks. I don't know what they're going to do. So network TV, bye-bye. I mean, look, we already know it's all over here, right? It's streaming. And if RFK Jr. actually pulls the plug on Big Pharma ads, that's going to be a problem for them. And I think he might do it. I mean, you can go back to the New York Times article and actually, not in this particular passage, but in a lot of what has come out, these particular drugs, they don't actually make a difference for people. And doctors are frustrated because they got people coming in asking for this name brand, this, that, and the other. And these drugs are actually not advancing people medically. I mean, heck, I think RFK Jr. has said this, for goodness sakes. I mean, we're like the most unhealthy country, yet we have all these resources. So clearly the ads aren't doing us any good. And all they're doing is keeping these networks afloat. And you think about all the lobbying money that goes into this, right? The lobbying money can exist because nobody in the mainstream media is willing to call any of this out. They can't, because they would be cutting off the hand that feeds them, so to speak. So major story there. I would not be surprised if sometime within the next 3 to 4 years. If RFK Jr. does this, these networks are gone. There will be a fire sale. I mean, Bob Iger over at Disney has already said he really, really, really wants to get rid of his mainstream television properties and also the cable ones too. He doesn't even want ESPN. It doesn't matter anymore, right? Because everything's streaming. He'd like to do more with Disney Streaming Plus. That's not going so well for him, though. I mean, they actually got to get some intelligent people that aren't just wokeified. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment because new developments on the Rachel Zegler front. But the other big story here is RFK Jr. is planning to cut 10,000 jobs. He's restructuring the entire health department. So this is massive. It includes roughly 1,400 jobs at NIH that are going to go bye-bye. So you're talking about just really, 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 really systemic change. I mean, this is a big, big deal. I actually have a guest coming on with me momentarily to talk some more about that. First, little shout out to our friends over at Cozy Earth. Have you heard of Cozy Earth? CozyEarth.com. Use my code word Trish. CozyEarth.com/Trish. I'm like super picky. Some of you may know that. Maybe you don't know that. But like I can't go to sleep in sheets that aren't really exquisite and really soft and really nice. And so I'm very happy because I have these particular sheets from Cozy Earth. They're the bamboo ones. They actually sent them to me, in fairness. As I always test out products before I ever talk about them, it's really important. So Cozy Earth sent me these sheets and I was like, gosh, these are really good and they're very economical. So I was like, yes, you know what? You know, if your wife wants them or if your husband wants them or if just you want them, I think they're a great gift. I think they're a great thing for family. Like sleep is important, right? We underrate that sometimes. You know, I don't sleep enough, frankly, but when I do get into my bed, I want to feel really, really, really good. So these are wonderful. They, the bamboo sheet set is what I have. Luxury sheet set. Luxury is, you know, listen, I think it's where you rest. Like you should feel luxurious. When I was younger in my career, I'd go and stay in these nice hotels and I'd be like, oh gosh, their sheets are so nice. Why don't I have these at home? Like, why am I skimping at home? So anyway, that's my story on this. I sleep on Cozy Earth sheets. Thank you to them for sending them to me. I am a connoisseur and my sales team was holding their breath. They're like, oh my God, is she going to like these or not? I'm like the princess and the pea, right? Like, is she going to like it? And if I don't like it, I'm not going to promote it. So fortunately, I like this. I like this a lot. They're hyperallergenic, they're organic, they're vegan, they're anti-microbial, no harmful chemicals. It's all really, really good stuff. It's also very good with temperature regulation. So that's important and super soft and great, great fabric. So check them out. You get 40% off by using code word Trish. Go to CozyEarth.com/Trish. 40% off for you. Use the code word. It helps the show, of course, because we're all independent here. We don't have those big pharma commercials, which is good. Anyway, listen, I mean, these job cuts are going to be massive. 10,000 at HHS. Some of those coming from NIH, and it's all courtesy of Doge, right? Doge is going in, and they're like they get a big red marker, and they're like, boom, 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 gone. Joining me right now with a little bit more on this is my friend Jeremiah Mosteller. He is from AFP, and he's all about going after these cuts. Doge is doing the right thing, and he wants to see much more of it. I spoke with him just a few minutes ago before coming on air. Jeremiah, good to have you here, my friend. I'm excited to talk about all this stuff because it's like boom, 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 one thing after another every day. There's more executive orders coming our way. The ones that I find especially exciting, business reporter that I am, is all these spending cuts. I guess my question to you is, we've got all this pushback, right, coming from the left. How do we get this to the finish line? I get that the executive order is step number one, but if we wind up in the courts, and believe me, we will. I mean, Chuck Schumer bragging about how they have 235 liberal judges that they installed during the Biden era just for this moment. How does this actually turn into reality?
Yeah, Trish. I mean, the Trump administration has done 100+ executive orders. They are moving faster, louder, and more comprehensively than any administration ever to reduce the size and scope of government. But if we hope for these positive things to outlast these 4 years, we need Congress to partner with them. We need them to act, to incorporate some of this into statute and into budget. We need to see it become part of federal law, or the next Democratic administration can just come back, re-bloat these agencies, and re-engage them into micromanagement of Americans' lives.
So do you anticipate a lot of lawsuits? I mean, you know, every which way you turn, because here they are. Doge is like out there saying, okay, we don't need this. We don't need this. USAID, wow. I mean, that one blew me away. Now it all kind of makes sense, right? Now I get why the media was so stressed about Donald Trump winning, because they're losing a lot. There's a lot to lose here financially. So this will all be fought out in the courts. Executive action doesn't really matter anymore?
I mean, that's what we expect. We see folks have their lawsuits ready to go the second that an action is announced, and they don't even have the full facts. So what we're consistently seeing in these pieces of litigation is, as they're moving through and the judges are asking questions, the actual basis of these lawsuits from the left are slowly being undermined because they're actually realizing what the true facts are. So they're essentially using chaos and hyperbolic language to make this seem like this is more than what it actually is right now.
Which is just trying to slim down a grossly exaggerated, completely unrealistic budget. I mean, I've never gotten this, Jeremiah. I remember once years ago when Obama was in office, I had this conversation, turned into a little bit of an on-air fight, which we didn't typically have at Bloomberg Television when I was there, but it was me and Gene Sperling. And I'm saying to him, but I don't understand, like, why do we have to always increase our spending relative to the increase in GDP growth, right? If your economy grows this much, the left always wants to somehow grow spending by that much or more. And my feeling is, like, if you're a family, right, and you get a pay raise, that doesn't mean you run out and buy a new car. Like, you try and, like, actually live within your means. And we haven't done that. And now you get a new team coming in with Doge. And I know you guys are working hard to make sure that Congress is in line with this, because I get it. Like, members of Congress all want their little pet projects too. But you got this new team coming in, almost like a consultant with fresh eyes, saying, yeah, we need to bring this spending back in check. It's like the family that's extended its credit card debt. It's out of control.
Mm-hmm. Trish, I mean, yeah, with a nearly $7 trillion budget, which is 6 times growth since 1995, I think it's common sense that there is fraud, waste, and abuse that can be cut out of that federal budget. I mean, we have more than $500 billion of spending that goes to programs that Congress has not reauthorized, that they've not said should continue to exist. And so it's important for us to take a look at all the programs, all of the agencies, determine, hey, what actually still should exist, and what do we actually need to take a hard look at getting rid of or scaling down or rethinking. And I think the most interesting thing about the left is you can look back a decade. Schumer, Pelosi, Clinton, all of them have videos that you can find online where they are talking about the need to cut fraud, waste, and abuse when they were in charge. But now that the Republicans are in charge, they don't think it's important anymore, and they actually think it's a constitutional crisis.
Well, I mean, this is why we're so broken, honestly. I mean, this is what's so frustrating about it all. I remember a time when we had all those same people saying we shouldn't have illegal immigration, right? You should come here legally. And then suddenly, once Trump comes on the scene and says, I don't want any more illegal immigration, suddenly it's like, let's open the floodgates. I mean, it's a massive form of TDS, which really just, I think, exaggerates this quote unquote divide. But, you know, Americans aren't feeling the divide, because I look at all the polls that are coming out, and overwhelmingly, I mean, he's got great numbers. Americans think the U.S. is on the right track. And I know there's a lot of unknowns out there, but you've got 2 inflation reports now that show inflation is not what it was. It's coming down, still up, but it's coming down. You've got manufacturing reports that point to this growth in the manufacturing sector. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, and we don't know how all these tariffs are going to shake out in the very sort of near term, but I think most Americans are with him on this idea. I think they trust him, which is important. They have no trust right now in a lot of these institutions, and rightly so. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Trish. I mean, if you look at the polling on Doge and its goals generally across demographics, whether we're talking Democrats, Republicans, independents, we see 60+% support for rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. We see high support among Republicans and independents, and even majority support among Democrats for cutting $1 trillion in government spending at the federal level. And we hear it every single day at AFP. You know, we have millions of activists across the country that my team has the opportunity to work with every single day. Americans are eager to reduce the cost and size of government and to cut red tape.
You know, that brings me to, you know, you guys are actively working and you're hearing about these things that need to be cut. And I just want to throw this out there to the viewers. Listen, if you have an idea on something that needs to get cut or you want to be involved in some way, shape, or form, I just recommend that they get involved with your organization because you have all these grassroots efforts. And I'm just going to give them the place they should go, which is dogeidea.com. Doge, D-O-G-E, idea.com. And go there now, because if you have an idea on something that Doge should be cutting in your local, state, federal government, I mean, wherever it is, I just think that people need to kind of embrace this as much as possible, because there's so much waste. And this is what, you know, this is our future, basically. I mean, if we don't get control of this, I don't know what our destiny is. I keep going back to Rome. I'm sorry, I've done that for years. I got a kick out of it when it became a TikTok meme, if you would, right? Because I'm like, yep, I've been on that for years, you know. Rome with all their spending and living off the dole, etc. We have to be responsible about it.
Mm-hmm. Trish, couldn't agree more. I mean, if you look at what the Biden administration has done, they have put nearly $20 billion of money toward corporate cronyism for their green agenda. And it's like, hey, I like a Tesla. I like Elon Musk. I love those cars. They're beautiful cars. But why are we spending $20 billion to subsidize them, and especially in communities where they don't want EVs, where they have to have a diesel-powered F-150? We're still spending millions of dollars to bid out the charging infrastructure.
Right, because we've got our agenda, right? So the EV agenda. But it's, to me, I look at it, and as a journalist, I'm just horrified. And not to wonk out, but I've been doing this for about a week now, so the viewers are used to it. The Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which allowed for all this spending because of Cold War, you know, propaganda that we wanted to get out there. And we were like the first ones to have radio and television. And so we were phenomenal, right, at getting out the word, our propaganda. And we used that to influence. And I understand it. Like, I get it. We didn't want to have to go to war with everyone. We wanted to influence regimes all around the world to have our political way of thinking. But Obama, in 2012, when it became part of the National Defense Act in 2013, he said we need to modernize this so that we can use some of that money, there was always this Chinese wall, and turn it back on the U.S. because in the name of preserving democracy, we need to do the same kind of propaganda effort right here at home. And that, to me, is also super disturbing because you're talking about basically $1 billion a week, upwards of $50 billion a year going to USAID. And now we're learning all this money was going to the New York Times, Reuters, BBC, I mean, you name it. And as we watch these hearings, right, that have been going on Capitol Hill with NPR and PBS, I'm just really horrified because they all feel as though they're arms of the Democrat Party, and it's all about graft, right? Like, it's about protecting your friends and putting money into stupid programs that we do not need. In the meantime, our poor kids in the U.S. can't really read or write. Just look at the test scores, Jeremiah. I mean, how do we change it?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we need Congress to do more than have hearings. Hearings are great. They disclose a lot of information, but we really need Congress to step up and help DOGE accelerate the cost savings, accelerate the reduction in the size of the federal government. And there's essentially three key things we need to see them do. They need to end the misguided Biden-era regulations that micromanaged our lives and told us what appliances we can own, how we can do our jobs. We need them to end those. We need them to codify these positive developments in these executive orders so they can outlast these 4 years. And then we need them to pass legislation that will proactively prevent future bureaucratic overreach and bloat. And Congress, we have an agenda for Congress that we've been working with our activists to push. And so we hope that they will take up this mantle and ensure that this doesn't just end when Trump leaves office.
Well, I mean, that's a big part of it, right? Someone said to me the other day, actually a big donor to Columbia is very concerned that, sure, they're giving you lip service right now at a place like Columbia University. Oh, we're changing this, that, and the other. But nothing will really change until you wipe out the board of directors, you get rid of all the heads of faculty, you change all this so that they really, you have to have this kind of systemic change. And whether you're talking about an institution like a university or whether you're talking about government, if you're just giving lip service and you're pretending to do things, but they're not actually embedded in the culture, like we need to change the culture of Washington, I think, Jeremiah, right? So that it's a culture of watching your pennies instead of just giveaways.
Yeah. No, couldn't agree more. I mean, I think one particular piece of legislation we've been talking a lot about that I don't think people really realized, but President Reagan had the authority whenever he was president to reorganize government agencies and actually go in and say, hey, we don't need this to exist anymore. Congress, can you rubber stamp this so I can get rid of this? That is lapse. And so we need Congress to pass the Reorganizing Government Act. So President Trump,
so we don't have that anymore?
It expired. It's still statutorily in the law, but the authority has expired. And so that's why Senator Mike Lee and Representative Comer have introduced the Reorganizing Government Act.
Wow. So if we can get that Reorganizing Government Act through and Republicans have the House and Senate, then that would thereby enable Congress and the president together to get rid of things like the Department of Education, and a host of other, the whatever it was, $2 million going to transgender surgeries in Peru or some place in South America, the DEI musical in Ireland or the transgender opera in Colombia. I mean, come on. It just seems like, given what we're up against, we need to take a red pen, right? And just go through this all. So again, just so people can get involved, I encourage you, Jeremiah's team is doing great work there at AFP. DogeIdea.com. This Reorganizing Government Act, I mean, this could be huge. I mean, I believe that. And it's going to be important, Jeremiah, let's just state the obvious, right? If you get that through, you want to make sure that the other side doesn't win in 4 years. Because then they can undo it all.
Yeah, no, that's right, Trish. And I think you see that being reflected in the moves around the Department of Education, where Trump has said, let's cut it down to the smallest possible size, and then we'll go to Congress to get their help to get rid of it. But you see the left, of course, is mischaracterizing that to say he wants to shut it down without Congress's approval. So it's interesting to see how, as we talked about earlier, these actions are being misconstrued by the left to cause chaos.
Well, thanks for all you do. We appreciate your support. DogeIdea.com. Everybody should go there now. Jeremiah, a pleasure to see you. Hope to see you back here soon.
Yes, thanks. Good to see you again, Trish.
So again, it's DogeIdea.com if you want to get involved. I encourage you. If you got some ideas on how we can cut some more government spending, they may be able to team up with you there. So it's a good organization. I was looking at the chat, and some of you guys were like, we need a few less Snow White-like movies. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, all this woke stuff has to end. And you know what? There's a reason for it to end right now, and it's in part because this stupid movie, Snow White, just totally bombed at the box office. They spent $270 million on this thing. They're not going to make their money back. And now the producer's son is coming out and blaming the whole thing on Rachel Zegler. He's not wrong. I mean, Rachel Zegler tanked this. There's a lot of other reasons they tanked it because, well, the dwarfs, right? The Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The dwarfs are so upset. They're so upset because they're like, hey, you know what? We wait for like the one time we can absolutely get cast. That's 7 roles that we could get cast in. And you guys are too darn worried about all the things you're worried about with your political correctness that you don't give us this opportunity. So one of them decided to fire back. Let's take a little watch.
It's like nowadays you can protest about just about anything. Well, why don't I begin a protest about the fact that Disney decided to use CGI dwarfs? Not even the real thing. We could have gotten hired. We could have gotten money for something, but no. They're so ashamed of the CGI dwarfs. They don't even have it on the first flyer. Well, it's time to make a movement.
Now you wash the dishes. You tidy up the room.
So the dwarfs are not happy, and you know what? The producer's son is not happy. Jonah Platt came out with an Instagram post that has since been deleted, but we happen to have. Let's take a look. So he said to somebody who said to him, oh my gosh, your dad flew to New York to reprimand a young actress, any words on this? Because that's sort of creepy as hell and uncalled for. People have the right to speech, do they not? Shame on your father. And he's like, oh, whoa, slow down. So if you'll recall, Rachel Zegler, the young woman from New Jersey who got very lucky because she won an open audition for West Side Story and got to play Maria in West Side Story, and then somehow mistakenly, believe me, it was a huge mistake. Disney regrets this one and is going to continue regretting this every single day. She sent out this tweet along with the movie trailer. Remember this, guys? She said, oh, here's the movie trailer. It's so exciting. This is so wonderful. I'm off in rehearsals for Romeo and Juliet right now. Bye-bye. Oh, and always remember, free Palestine. Well, that kicked off a whole you-know-what storm, really and truly. Because, well, for starters, the woman who was playing the evil stepmom would be a former member of the IDF, Gal Gadot. So she had all these security issues as a result of this. And it just kind of like created a lot of animosity on both sides. So it's not really what you want to do if you're playing the role of Snow White, shall we say. So it became such a big deal that Variety reported that, Mark Platt, who was directing this thing and had a good history of good things like Wicked, for example, which, I'm not crazy about those actresses, but was not as bad a production as this one in particular was. So he flew out there and he's like trying to talk her off the ledge. And, she apparently was unwilling to take down her tweet. He tried to explain how serious this was. And so this is what this guy on Instagram is referencing to Jonah Platt. So Jonah responds and he just lays it all out there. I mean, he has no use, literally no use for Rachel Zegler. He writes, you really want to do this? Yeah, my dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics. Yeah, her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and do publicly for. This is called adult responsibility and accountability. And her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. Free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and the blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism, he writes, is not something to be coddled or encouraged. Whoa, this woman's done. Like, she's done. She's never going to get another job in Hollywood. I said that yesterday, but then, and I actually said she was a total narcissist who had no clue sort of about the overall picture. And this guy last night basically said the exact same thing. But I'm going to add to this, like, she will not get another job in Hollywood because nobody's going to take that risk. She's not talented enough. She's not pretty enough. I mean, I hate to go there, but she's this little tiny, nothing who belongs back in New Jersey in the High School Musical, really and truly. Like, she got put on the big stage, frankly, too soon. And Disney didn't know what to do with her. She managed to get Gina Carano fired because Gina wouldn't use those ridiculous pronouns in her tweets like Rachel would. And Rachel went bonkers and started tweeting about that because Gina had put bebop boop or something like that. I mean, that was innocuous. That wasn't like what Rachel was doing. And then Rachel took it a step further. So, by the way, this show has 1.8 out of 10. The movie has a 1.8 on IMDb ratings out of 10. It's terrible. I saw it. It is such a waste of money and such a waste of time, but I feel like I should because, I need to be able to actually be able to tell you without any kind of bias what a bad movie it is. And she's terrible in it. The cast doesn't really mesh. There's no chemistry between her and the prince. Of course, she seemed to resent that there had to be a prince there to begin with, right? It was all supposed to be about Snow White and Rachel Zegler, but she won't get another job. Here she is celebrating in the theater all by herself, really. The theater looks kind of empty too. I mean, I'm sure she staged this, but this is a little like the theater that I went to. Oh my gosh. $270 million disaster plus another $100 million for the promotion surrounding this movie, and it's not going to make the money back. And now this guy's dad, Mark Platt, he's got, a black eye on him because he oversaw this multi-million-dollar disaster. I mean, this cost more than $250 million, and it was bad. And nobody wants to see it because on top of her nasty little tweets there, Rachel Zegler also decided to take aim at Trump supporters. And by the way, who would go see like Snow White? Maybe Trump supporters might actually take their daughters to see Snow White. It's a nice fairy tale and all that. Well, she went after them hard. F Trump. May he never know peace. Anybody who supports him, may they never know peace. I mean, wow, she's unhinged. And so then they had to get her a social media handler up until the movie's release, and perhaps even now. She's not allowed to post anything without it going through Disney first because she's a loose cannon that can't be trusted. It was all wrong. She was wrongly cast. She was given too much too soon. And think about it. You know what she is? She's just like all these young kids that don't want to work and they think that everything should be handed to them and life should be easy and they can sit there and pontificate and, claim all these things that are ridiculous. You get to choose your gender. I mean, it goes on. And so I would just say this, you know what? Disney has a huge problem right now. They can't seem to find their mojo. They have no creativity left because all the creative people, they're long gone because they had people like Rachel Zegler intimidating everyone into, well, you got to use your pronouns and you got to do this and we got to have a trans character and we got to have a gay character and we have to have this and we have to have, somebody who's not technically white, whatever. I don't know what she is. She's half Colombian, whatever, and Polish, I guess, by background. We're going to play that angle up because we want to really make the right mad. No. You don't want to make the right mad. You actually want to create a movie that everybody wants to see, like the whole country wants to see. Isn't entertainment about unifying people? That's not what it is today. Not at Disney. So when I look at this company and I look at its stock price and I think about, is it worth investing in? I keep coming away with no. No. Because they don't have their quote unquote magic. It's gone. And they've got a struggling television business with the likes of Whoopi Goldberg, who they desperately need to fire, and Joy Behar, who lies through her teeth, the latest and greatest being her little episode on TV today. Do you know, this was just unbelievable. So she gets on there and she gets going on and on about Trump. And she said, how dare he blame Biden for the signal thing? Because one of the things that has been pointed out, of course, is that Biden's team is the one that loaded Signal on. So they clearly saw this as a safe, secure mechanism in which to communicate. And Joy's like, oh, how dare he? How dare he blame anyone? I want you to see this. This is, again, ABC News needs to get rid of this woman. Disney needs to get rid of this woman.
They also have a tendency to blame the Biden administration. Yeah. It's like, move on. That ship has sailed. I never remember in my lifetime a sitting president trashing a previous president. I've never heard that before. Never heard, Ronald Reagan didn't do it. They're St.
But
Ronald.
It's the common enemy. It's what drives their base together is the other.
Yeah.
So they do that to create.
Yeah.
So she thinks that there's no president that's ever actually... let me just go back in time. I can think of many, many, many instances where Biden was blaming inflation that he created through his ridiculous third stimulus check and that giant program with trillions of dollars that he and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer pushed through. And of course, the Federal Reserve, which couldn't help itself. They were just printing. They created the inflation. That's why we were looking at almost double-digit increases in consumer prices. We saw them on producer prices. That was all Biden. And he sat there the whole time and was trying to blame Trump. I'm like, buddy, that's not working. Okay, so to Joy Behar, just lying through her teeth, yet again on The View. I'm telling you this. Mark my words. ABC can't manage this in this moment in time. They get the FCC, Brandon Carr, up there, you know what? He's sending letters off to Iger. You got Whoopi Goldberg, clearly terrified to speak. She's stopped. She goes after Elon Musk, but she's tried to rein herself in terms of what she says about Trump. And then you get just such irresponsibility on that set with one Joy Behar saying clueless things like that. So I predict, I'm telling you right now, guys, they can't handle a show like this. It is too costly. They are under threat of losing all of their big pharma ads. Thank you very much, RFK Jr., who's about to get rid of those puppies. That's half their revenue. So what are they going to have left? They can't afford this. They won't be able to afford these salaries and the big studio audience. The whole world has changed, and ABC just hasn't quite figured it out. George Stephanopoulos, he's going to be out of a job pretty soon. I hardly even see him on that show on Sundays anymore. All of these networks are basically going to be done and over. And I'm going to tell you something. It can't happen soon enough because they deserve it. They've lied to us. They won't allow for the truth. And so the fire sales are coming. Losing that big pharma money means you're not going to be able to afford The View. You're not going to be able to afford World News Tonight. You're not going to be able to afford any of those programs on ABC. So you know what? Iger's up against it right now. He's got a mess on his hands with Snow White, and he's got a mess on his hands with ABC News. So things are about to change in a massive way, and I consider it kind of exciting. We're here watching it all on the front lines of history, as I like to say. If you're interested, I don't know why you would be, but you know what? We've got a very fair piece on Disney because there are elements of the business that are intriguing, like the cruise side of the business, although in my opinion that's going downhill, and it's going downhill fast. But it's the only thing that's really kind of existing right now. They have the parks, of course, their entertainment division, though, with the movie division, it's a train wreck. So maybe if the stock gets cheap enough, we've done some analysis. You can check it out if you use code word dollar at 76 Research. The real value at 76 Research that I created for all you, though, is in these portfolios. Go look at these model portfolios. Those are our top 5 holdings in each one of them. 10 to 15 stocks in each one. And this is really, I just want to make sure that everybody gets a fair shake out there because, you're not going to be able to count on Uncle Sam. I think we've got a better administration, but the reality is what it is. And so you have to look out for numero uno. Thank you, by the way, for all of your generosity. Just tremendous to see on the show today. We're going to be back with much more live on the program tomorrow, right here, The Trish Regan Show. Subscribe, like, share, and make a comment. I do read them all. I'll see you tomorrow.